Mary redeemed a $50,000 cash prize playing Chumba Casino this year.
I was only playing for fun, so winning this was a dream come true.
Chumba Casino is America's #1 social casino experience. It's serious fun. With over 80 casino-style games to choose from, you too could win life-changing amounts of cash. Be like Mary. Log on to ChumbaCasino.com and give them a whirl. That's ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details. The voice in the preceding commercial was not the actual voice of a winner.
Hello, and welcome to the Proactive Caregiving Podcast. As a CPA with over 20 years as an industry accountant, Jessica stepped away from the corporate world to become a full-time caregiver for her mother. Having learned invaluable lessons along the way, she is now here to share those with you and to invite you to join her on this caregiver's journey. Here is your host, Jessica Cannon.
Hey everybody, I'm here today with Jnette Yates, and I was excited about having her on because she's going to touch on one of the many complexities of our caregiving journey, this caregiving life that refers to the sandwich gen. And I know that may have brought up something really quick, but no, we're not talking about PB&Js or ham and cheese. It's the reality of what caregiving presents to people in our age group and many others. So before we go into it, I want to welcome on Jnette Yates. Good afternoon, Jnette.
Hello. Hey there. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you're able to. So what I know of, and others may not, is that you were a very young individual when you started, I guess I can actually say, started as a caregiver because your mother was diagnosed very early in life. What was that like as a child for you?
Yeah, so I had very little memories of my mom before she was diagnosed, which was in 1984. I was around 8 years old when she was diagnosed with her illness, which is myasthenia gravis. I have one memory of her being able to ride a bike and us doing like some physical activity type things during the summer here in Florida. And that's about the last memory I have of her before she got sick. And then the next memory I have of her is counting her medications out for her after she came home from a long several months stay in the hospital. So now looking back, I mean, it's been over 30 years at this point. Mm-hmm. Looking back, it was traumatic for me. And being a child, I remember being very worried about her, and I was being taken care of by relatives, and they were trying, of my mom, my mom's sister and her family who's taking care of me. She's also worried about my mom and trying to take care of me and allay my fears. And it was just very traumatic. And then she comes home from the hospital, and then I'm back in, at home with her and my new stepdad that, he had recently married my mom, right before she got sick. And so it was like, a new mom, essentially, because she was completely different than before.
Right.
A person who I love, my stepdad, but also didn't know very well, in the grand scheme of things. Mm-hmm. And just trying to navigate all of that and still be a kid, which was really hard.
Of course. And that's one of the important things is when a kid steps into this role, you think about the emotions and the issues that an adult goes through as a caregiver, and it's hard to think about it from the kid's perspective because they see things so differently. And I'm sure the things that you saw as a child and how you felt may have carried over into your adult life, or it may have been, I don't know, you may even be able to speak to that. Was it something that it's just, you kind of grew up with it, you didn't know any different, and so as an adult, it it is what it is? It was the normal way you knew how to live?
Well, to some extent, yes. I mean, our family adapted to the new normal of
Right.
what life was like with my mom's illness. And of course, as a child, I wanted to do the right thing to help my mom. And I didn't necessarily understand the complexities of her illness or what would be harmful to her, what would be helpful to her. But I seemed to have, and again, I don't know if this was something that was said to me. Like, I can't, I don't know that anybody said, you need to do this, but I had this impression of it's very important to be the best daughter I can be, make the best grades I can be, so that I don't stress out my mom, because I knew somehow that stress made my mom's illness worse. So I needed to not be the contributor to her stress, because that could make her worse. And so that had tremendous implications for me as I grew up. And, like I said, looking back now, I don't want to make it sound like this was something that was told to me, like, you need to be perfect. But I got that feeling. I felt like I had to be the best,
Right.
So that she could get better, or so that she wouldn't get worse. So that is something that kind of trickled into my growing up and my development.
I think I kind of did a little bit of that as well. And you just want things to smooth over and things to be easy as possible, and not feel like you're the one adding to the situation. But
right,
it's hard to tell until you're, hindsight. So as the years go by and you eventually become, your adult life starts to evolve. I mean, did that keep you from wanting to go off to school, wanting to go off and, have a life of your own? Or did you, does the guilt step in to say, I can't have a life of my own, I need to stay here with my mother, near my mother? Or how did that come about for you?
So one of the interesting things that happened about that time in my life, when I was starting to think about school and getting out in the world, and then eventually, dating and marriage and all of those things, is my mom actually went through a period of remission. So she was able to work and do most of the things. She was driving, she was working, she was basically, she and my stepdad, they were, able to function without me being there all the time.
Nice.
And it kind of went back to a more, she's my mom and I'm the kid, or I'm the young adult. Whereas growing up, it was like, she's my mom, but I'm also taking care of her. So she's taking care of me, and I'm taking care of her, and she's taking care of me. It was kind of this circle. And then there was that period of time where I really was able to kind of step back into that more traditional, I'm a high schooler, I'm a college student, I'm an adult role. And she was still going to the doctor and doing those kind of things. And she maybe would have like good days and bad days, or good times and bad times, but it wasn't this constant need for me. And so I was able to kind of dream and think big and think about, that the possibilities are endless kind of thing, because I didn't have to think about that in the same way. And so I kind of got complacent with my role as a caregiver, and didn't necessarily think about myself as a caregiver for a period of time. And then things started to get worse again. And by then I'm married, I have kids.
And by then
she lives far away, things like that.
Right. Life shifts and changes, and more obstacles are put in the way. And I can see now, this is where you get into that sandwich generation. So tell me about that. What does that look like?
Well, it's really interesting because the term has been around for a while, and a lot of times it refers to people who they have children, but then something happens to their parents. You know, maybe there's a diagnosis that happens quickly. You know, it's a sudden onset type of thing, and then they're all of a sudden in the sandwich. And for me, the sandwich generation was kind of, you know, I was in a type of sandwich generation as a child, I think, like in a type of sandwich, because I was trying to be a child.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And then I'm also trying to learn to care for someone else while at the same time learning to care for myself, because I'm a child. I'm still having to learn all those things, learning how to care for someone else. And then, of course, as a parent, you know, my mom started needing more of my help when my kids were still babies. So, and then it's only increased since then, and now I have teenagers, which, spoiler alert, they still need you as much as teenagers as they do when they're infants. It's just different.
The demands are higher.
Yeah, it's just a different kind of need. But what has happened over the last several years, and I think this is whether you're a sandwich generation caregiver or you don't have kids and you're caregiving, a lot of times, especially when you're dealing with a chronic illness or an illness that may worsen over time, we kind of just were managing for so long. Like, you know, we would have a certain routine. Like, she lived about an hour and a half away from me, and she would just come into town when it was time for a doctor's appointment. Well, then it was getting to where I would have to go get her and bring her in for a doctor's appointment. And then it was like, okay, well, that's not going to work. We need to move you into town. But even into town, that wasn't working because it was too far away, you know, because of traffic and all that. So we moved her closer. And it's one of those things where we just kept kind of hodgepodging her care.
Right.
Like, who can do this? Who can do that? Who's going to do this? And only recently, my, you know, I realized, like, wait, this isn't healthy for me or her. You know, we need to look at getting more help. Only in the last, you know, I would say year maybe, have we been more proactive, to use your term, proactive in saying, okay, where can we get help from, you know, outside sources or more support on the team.
Right.
Because it was just a gradual increase of her need over time. And you think, I can do this. Oh, that's no big deal. I can do that. I can swing by the store. I can pick up your medicine. I can. And then you're wait, I'm doing all of these things. And by the way, my kids are growing up. I'm trying to be on the PTA. I'm trying to teach them how to do things. I'm trying to spend time with them. And that, you know, that constant tug between the two things, I think, is the hardest thing for me.
Absolutely. I think we tell ourselves, I can be that super mom, I can be that super caregiver, and I can do it all. I can just prioritize the heck out of my day and just get it all done. And if you survive the day, by the time you lay down and put your head on the pillow at night, it's multiple tasks in your mind. Tomorrow I need to this, make sure don't forget that. And by the way, and when I go from here, then I can, and I'm already organizing the pattern of running errands in my mind. And so, of course, it takes me more than 45 minutes to fall asleep before I finally say, okay, stop, turn it off, go to bed. Tomorrow's going to be a wash repeat anyways.
Right. And that's, you know, one thing I've discovered as I've started this journey of really, you know, I've recently started thinking about my own self-care as a lifestyle instead of things that I do when I'm stressed out.
Right.
Like, I don't, you know, please, I'd love a 90-minute massage.
Right.
That's great. And that counts as something, but that's not the way my body needs to be cared for. Like, I need daily habits of self-care. I need to remember that I'm a person with needs every day and address those needs. And so that's one of the things that I'm working on, is seeing where I created those habits already, where I could improve. And sometimes it's like, well, I'm going through the motion of this habit, but am I really embracing this moment of self-care? Or am I just going through this habit because it's my habit? Like yoga in the morning, I'll be halfway through the routine and be like, wait, I've been thinking about all the stuff I have to do today instead of paying attention to what to do.
Your mind gets on that treadmill.
Right. So embracing those times that I have created in my schedule to take care of myself, but to really embrace those as, no, this is your time to take care of yourself. You don't need to worry about any of those other things right now. Your kids will still be there when you're done. Your mom will still be there. You know, you've got time to do what you need to do today.
Right. Right. And I like the way you put it that way with the self-care, because I've heard other people say, well, self-care isn't just about getting your hair and nails done. No, it's far more than that. It really is choosing a lifestyle that supports your needs, you know? And when you get lost in the day, and especially when you're sandwiched between if like me, also when you care for your parent, and before this pandemic, it was I had a little bit of a break in between because my son would go to school for the day. So during the day, I just had to focus on my mom. And then when he comes home, it's like you want to balance routine and conversation and the dinner. Luckily, like you said, once they go from their little kid age to the teenagers, you're not completely engrossed with that evening dinner, bath, bedtime routine. You know, they're somewhat self-sufficient, but even in itself, it's like trying to balance all of that stuff. And I finally had to get to the point where I need to make more than just the mental list of what I have to do tomorrow. I want to make the list of, what do I need? What are my needs overall, period? And then just kind of find those throughout the day and find those moments that mom is on the couch. She's either watching some rerun of Golden Girls or into crossword puzzles or into something else. Like, I can sit next to her and try to read a book, or I can sit next to her and try to have somewhat of a conversation, or I can sit next to her and just be quiet and be still. And it's just all the things in my mind would go, what do I need? What do I need? What do I want? What would I rather be doing at this moment? And it's like, oh, okay, I really need to make a mental switch. Yeah.
Well, and too, you know, you mentioned like as the kids get older, there is this, you know, like you're not having to bathe them.
Right.
All this kind of stuff, which can have its own issues. And this is what I discovered, like you were mentioning, especially during the pandemic, is like I would get up. I have a job that's remote anyway, but it would be now anyway. But, you know, I'm logged in by 7:45 in the morning. My kids get up, they do whatever, they play video games, they did their online school or whatever. I'm doing my thing. I'm done. I come out, do a little dinner. Maybe they eat it, maybe they don't, because maybe they just ate, or maybe they're eating later. We may or may not talk to each other that much. Then I hop in the car, go over to mom, do the things I need to do for her, come back home, and then it's like, okay, now I got to clean the kitchen or pick up or do whatever whatever this chore is for that night if I feel like, which, spoiler alert, I don't always do that either.
Me neither.
Sometimes I just sit on the couch and watch TV with my family. They're not talking to me. I'm not really talking to them. We're just watching TV. It's not like it's fine. Like, we're on the couch together. It's sweet, but it's not that conversation. And that could be days.
Yep.
You know? So yes, it's great that they can fix their own meals and bathe themselves and all these things, but it's like, that means that like I have to work at interaction with my family.
Exactly.
That it's not just given.
Well, and you're not only working at it, but, and I'm sure you can relate to this, but you get to that moment, you're on the couch, you're watching stuff together, and I'm thinking, well, at least we're spending time together, but it's not really spending time together. Yes, we're sitting in the same room watching the same thing on TV, but we're not interacting. We're not communicating. We're not chatting about stuff because I don't know, for you, I do struggle with those conversations to have with mom. And it gets to be, as the time goes on, and we were going through so much of the same stuff you mentioned, trying to get her from her house closer to our house. And then eventually it was in our house because the obstacles are just there. And you think about convenience for yourself, but also meeting their needs. And it's part of my needs was that conversation, that communication. And at the end of the day, I've made it through the day with mom meeting her needs. And one of my needs was that chatty catty, communication that wasn't there.
Yeah. And I think that, probably something that, like I said, the pandemic has made it even more obvious. But, it's also interesting too, because, my mom lives in her own home and we have care people that come in during the day, and then I go over in the evenings and on the weekends. And but one of the things that's really interesting is, she basically didn't have that much interaction before, because she would basically her main job is can I get from my bed to my chair and can I get to my doctor's appointments with the help of my daughter, my caregiver. And, but she was at least getting out to go to the doctor. Her friends would at least stop by from time to time. And of course now it's not safe to do that. And so unless I go over on the weekends, especially, there's no one.
Right. Yes.
And so making sure that part of my care that I'm giving her is just that interaction as well, because I've been doing this for so long, sometimes, I can get to be where I'm showing up and going, okay, tell me what you need. What still needs to be done?
Get to the point.
And I just do it. And then I'm like, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Yep. And sometimes I need to do that. And I've learned to tell her ahead of time, hey, today, for example, we had a doctor's appointment and I was like, listen, today we'll be doing this and then we're getting you home and then I've got to get home. And so when I drop you off, I need to make sure that you have everything you need for the evening, because I probably won't be able to come back this evening. And if I tell her ahead of time, that's fine. But I was used to just flying in and being like, what do you want? And then I realized that wasn't helpful for her, and it wasn't helpful for our relationship either.
Right.
So learning how to give her the care that she needs, but also not just physically, but emotionally as well, has been something that I've had to grow into as I've grown up as well.
So, and it's interesting now that you said, as you've grown into that, now that you look back at it, and especially having your own children, the question that I've had other caregivers ask is, do we allow our kids to help with caregiving? At what point, things are...
Well, and I think I say yes. Now, I also say that I'm not a role model for this. I don't do a great job at it. And part of that is because I know what I'm doing. I don't have to teach anybody what to do. I just go do it.
Right.
But I know that my mom has always loved when my children have been involved. From the time they were little. And like I said, now my mom's gone through different phases of her illness and different degrees of illness. So, when they were babies, she was able to hold them, and now not that she could now because they're ginormous. But, now that if I had a baby, that would really be as possible. It's very difficult for that. But, she calls them when she sees them, her granny vitamins, because she feels like that gives her some energy. And so the more I can incorporate them into her care, the better it is for her. And then, of course, I think it's important, I want my kids to see the good, the bad, and the ugly of it all, because I want them to know that, yes, even when it's not convenient, even when I don't want to do it, even when it's potentially gross, sometimes, it is, like, I still do it because, I love her. It's the right thing to do. It's what we do for family.
Right.
And now when to do that and if to do that, I think that has to be up to the individual caregiver and family dynamic and the person being cared for. As long as they're able to make their own decisions about who cares for them and how, I think it's important to let them do that. And so while I think, for my situation, it is something that I, hope to even be able to do more of, but my children have always been with me when I was taking her in and out of the hospital, and, she was in her physical rehab facility, and, we would go out to the farm to get her for her doctor's appointments. Like, they were always a part of that. And so now that they're older, not so much, because they get to say no. They didn't have to go with me because they could stay home by themselves.
Oh, right.
Whereas when they were little, it's like, I can't leave them home. I gotta go. So
they're along
coming
for the ride, whether they like it or not.
Right. So,
and one of the
but
things,
I think that's a conversation that every caregiver and their person should have, and then the family. So
definitely.
But I don't think there's a right or wrong there.
No, and there's moments that, I see my mom's face light up when the kids are around, when her grandkids are there with her. You see them light up. And sometimes it's a relief because, hey, Mom, the kids are here. They want to spend time with you. And it gives me that moment to step away. Like, while you get to visit with Grandma, I kind of fade into the background. I need to go to the bathroom. I want to switch laundry loads. I need to go pull something out of the refrigerator, get ready for dinner, or whatever it is. And you're always multitasking, but it kind of gave me that little bit of reprieve, however short it was. But then kind of keeping that ear out to listen and see how long the conversation is going. And it doesn't take long until it kind of goes quiet or silent. And then I can tell, okay, the kids have to peek back in to see, are they still interacting? Are they still happy about being there and interacting? Are they trying to also find a way to exit the room so they can go find something else to do? It's hard because I know the age differences. We try to get our son to interact. Sometimes we would ask, could you go play checkers or dominoes or Scrabble with Grandma? And a lot of times it was, yeah, sure. And then as he got older and more into his own interests, it was like, do I have to? So it was like, okay, those indicators are definitely there.
Well, and I think too, it's easy for me sometimes to get frustrated with that with my kids. I'm like, don't you want to go give her granny vitamins?
Right.
It's one of those things. But, that's a developmental thing as well. And I'm pretty sure that when I was a teenager and I was their age, I wasn't crazy about doing pretty much anything that my parents wanted me to do. And so, just trying to continue to encourage that and explain the importance of it, but at the same time, not shaming my kids for acting, and I want them to be honest with me and be able to say, how they're feeling about it, or if they're feeling awkward or whatever, because that's an opportunity to discuss that further.
Definitely.
So I don't want to just shut it down.
Those teaching moments when you see them changing, because as an adult for me, it still is when I see the changes and the differences from 1 week to a month to a year, and I think to my mind, wow, this time last year she was able to do, X, Y, and Z. And now she's barely able to and forget doing these other things. And it's hard because it's a reality. We're heading in a direction that we know it's coming, but all of those good days, it just seems like the inevitable as postponed that much further off because she's doing great. She's having these good days. And then there's the not so good days. And it's like, oh, reality's back again. We're heading in that direction. So it's like, it's kind of hard to, I don't know, not think about that. So I worry about my son and how he sees it and how he's processing all of that. And so I had a moment with my older son a couple years back, and kind of where this whole proactive thing slowly but surely started to evolve for me was being in Costco one day, standing there waiting to check out with our list of items. And I had looked to some one point and we started a conversation about grandma, and I finally told him, I said, I promise you I will take better care of myself so I am not a burden on you too early in life. And I felt guilty saying that because my mom, I love her and I want to take as best care for her, but I knew that time was going to come, that reality was going to just be too much for me and or the kids to help out.
Yeah.
And so that's where
and I think that's one of the things that's interesting about my mom's particular condition, because it is not cognitive. It does not affect her cognitively, and which is wonderful. But at the same time, you know, we're on year 30 something.
Right.
And, you know, things have changed so rapidly and so much over the years. Like I said, she's not able to walk or even hold her head up. And then she's working and driving. And then she's not, you know, and then she ends up getting, you know, breast cancer, and we deal with that. And then she has other, you know, she's been in the hospital in ICU several times, you know, just kind of everything's up and down and back and forth. And it's a long, long haul. And, you know, every time I, you know, am with her, I'm still continuing to try to, especially the more caregivers I meet who are caring for their relatives that, you know, are, you know, that have dementia. I tell my mom all the time, like, while you can still make decisions and do these things, you need to do them, you know, because she gets so tired that she often wants to just say whatever you think is best. And I say there'll be time for that at some point, probably, where I will have to make these decisions. But I want you, and I'm talking even like the smallest decisions. Like, I want you to feel like you have as much control as possible, because I see the weight of having to make those decisions on my caregiver, you know, that my caregiver friends have. It's so hard as well. But the length of time I've been caring for my mom is different than a lot of people are working through right now. So that's something I think is pretty unique about my caregiving journey, is that it started quite a long time ago.
Yeah, it started well before. You're still in it. It started well before you were able to really just be a normal kid with, you know, maybe not, I don't want to say normal. It's hard to use those words, normal, abnormal, you know, but just having that happy, playful, interactive childhood and not have to worry about caring, you know, that's something that, and I think that's where, like you mentioned, the using the age and the level of maturity, but that's when you're able to give the choice. But there's those moments, and you've lived it, where the choice wasn't given. It's just that life happens and everyone has to react and respond, and how everyone reacts and responds is different, just as much as the illness or disease that your loved ones is living with. So it's an interesting dynamic to find balance in all of that, which is definitely where that self-care is incredibly important.
Well, and I think one of the hard thing for me to get to a place basically I started a journey of learning how to take care of myself. I didn't always take great care of myself or cope with things well. And so on my journey of learning how to better take care of myself and to cope with regular life stress and the stress of being a caregiver, I developed certain, self-care habits like my yoga and, time, my Bible study, things like that. But I've also learned, especially over this last a while, I'm really trying to develop a lifestyle where it's not just like a hodgepodge when I can get to it kind of thing, but more like daily practice. Whenever you, as a caregiver, especially as someone in the sandwich generation, whenever you're saying yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else. So whether it's, if you can give time to your loved one and your kids, you've said no to yourself or your job or your husband, or your spouse or whatever. And then if you I find if I have like a really great caregiving day with my mom and I'm like, oh, I was the champion, I get a brownie point.
Yes.
And I feel so great. Then I look at my kids or work or whatever. I'm like, man, those two things really suck. Or if I have like a really great day at work, it's at the expense of, do I have to rush over to mom or did I give her enough time? Do I even cook dinner for the kids? I don't even know.
Right.
And so, and then, like I said, with my own, health habits, that to take care of myself, it's like I'm doing yoga, but I'm thinking about all the other things, or I'm running on the treadmill or running outside while I'm listening to the marketing podcast I need to listen to. It's like, okay, well, learning to be able to say no without that guilt and learning that there's a myth of balance. Like there is, not everybody's going to get the perfect dose of Jnette,
Right.
including Jnette, every single day, but learning to be able to say no to some things, or not now, or not yet, and not have the guilt about that is something I'm working on now, and just trying to be present in whatever moment I am saying yes to is, part of that stuff as well.
Definitely.
And it's hard.
It is. It's very hard because, like I said, you want to be the super caregiver, the super mom, and that can do everything. I can do all things. And it's one of the plaques that I keep in my office area. I can do all things through him who gives me strength. And I look at that and think, I can do everything until I get into that one moment. And it's that internal child tantrum that says, stop, I don't want to do it anymore. I don't like this. I need to put myself in a timeout, I can't tell you how many times I've actually gone and bought some bath bombs and they've sat in my bathroom closet for months after. And so it's, finding that balance with guilt-free balance. And at the same time, it's important to me to not only find that balance for myself, but be able to model it and show it to my kids so that they learn now while they're young and not in that moment of down the road, oh crap, now what? I've been in that situation so many times that, what can I do?
And you said about that, the verse or the quote, I can do all things. Mm-hmm. It says all things, but not everything. And I have to tell myself.
Right. There is a difference.
It's all things, not everything.
There are only so many hours of the day.
Right. And you mentioned kind of that frustration, like grumpy feeling. And that was something that I was feeling before we got some extra help. Mm-hmm. And then we lost some of it because of the pandemic. But, people are still doing as much as they can to help, and we still do have our caregivers, so that's helpful. But before we had the home health aide coming in, and I was, doing more. I was really in a kind of a bad, like I was always kind of in a bad mood, and that's when I was running in and out, flying in, and not really spending that dedicated time. And I remember feeling so much shame about that. And feeling like, what's wrong with me? This, she needs this help. Like she has been dealing with this for so long. Can you imagine what this must be like for her? How dare you have a bad attitude? And then I met a woman, her name is Laura Howe, and she does social work. But I met her at a convention or conference, I guess. they're called conferences these days. But I met her at a conference, and she introduced me to the idea of compassion fatigue.
Yes, that is a real thing.
I had not heard of that. I know what burnout is. Right. And I used to teach in a public school system. I mean,
oh yeah,
all about
that
then burning out and end of the year and all this kind of stuff. I'm familiar with that, but this idea of compassion fatigue was something that I did not truly understand, and she was really helpful for me in kind of breaking that down and saying, if you didn't, you're feeling a frustration and annoyance and just kind of like not even, feeling like you care sometimes, like you're just going through the motions. That is compassion fatigue. And you can't have compassion fatigue without compassion. So it was because of the, this lifelong walk and these several years of caregiving compassionately, and really caring for my mom, that I was developing these, this kind of bad habit of, I wasn't taking care of myself, and I wasn't, giving myself permission to relax, and I wasn't. And that was really helpful for me to learn, like, okay, I am really feeling this, and I need to acknowledge that I'm feeling it so that I can move past that feeling.
Right.
Because as another good friend of mine said, it's not our feelings that hurt us, it's how we cope with them that sometimes hurts us. And so learning to admit that I had those feelings, and even, I would even have conversations with my mom, like, I'm really sorry I just bit your head off,
Right.
Like, I don't know what just happened. And then being able to explain to her what I was learning and, how we could ask for more help and those kind of things was extremely helpful for me. Yeah,
because asking for help sometimes is, since we want to do it all, we don't want to ask for help. We don't want to put down that torch of saying, I can do it all. But the compassion fatigue, it's like being, I recently also heard that you can be situationally depressed. You can, my mom, majority of what I remember was her being bipolar, long before we ever dealt with any of the mixed dementia. And so she was always in these highs, lows, and oftentimes more lows than usual. And that depression, it made me worry about when I was feeling the blues or feeling down some of these scenarios caring for her. I thought, well, it was almost one of the things that I didn't want to admit to myself. I am not depressed. I can handle this. This is not hard. This is not an issue. This is my mother. I should be able to, all the things that I would try and convince myself until I finally have those moments of saying, okay, this is depressing me because I feel like no matter what I do, it's never enough for her. Or not that she's telling me I'm not enough, just that the journey that she's on, I know where she's headed. I can't stop her progression of the disease. So no matter what I do, it's not enough. It's just maintaining her daily. And that gets to be very a heavy weight to, care in that kind of environment. And wanting her to
Well, and
have
I
the
think
best
that's
was always
something. Well, and as you were talking, I was thinking about my mom's experience, her journey to it's a physical illness, but the fact that she's been dealing with it since 1984, and she's a very unique case and all these things, like, as her caregiver and her daughter, like, even if we had the full time, like, even if we lived in a palace and had full time,
Right.
help, I would still be part of her caregiving, group. And, not having to not only be able to care for her physically, but also, there are times where she needs moral support or emotional support, and having to educate myself to not only take care of myself emotionally, but also understand her emotional ups and downs and not have that, spiral me into a panic of, what's going to happen, or, that's been something else I've had to learn is, okay, so it's not just like being a CNA and a nurse.
Right.
You're also a counselor and sometimes a physical therapist and a house cleaner or
a hairdresser.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. Fortunately, my mom has never been like a huge makeup or hair person.
Mine
so, she's easy peasy when it comes to that. And, but we do, every now and then we get the makeup out playing it for sure.
That's one of the things that always helped me put a smile on her face. I would, after shower days, that was also the little carrot to dangle that I would style her hair. If she would get in the shower for me, then I would definitely style her hair and make her look like a model by the time she came out. And so that was one of the things I did take the time to blow dry her hair and roll it and style it and flip it up for her, and take pictures of her and make her smile. And she would say she hated it, but then eventually she smiled for those photos, and I think she was fibbing. I think she loved it because it was those little moments that perked her up. But it was, by the time I was done with her and helping her get perked up, and she would return back to the couch, back to her normal state of being, and it was just, oh my goodness, that was so much. Now I want to go and have my hair done.
Right. Well, and I think too, like trying to create those moments does something for our loved one, but it also like creates some memories for us in the midst of all of the bathing and the all of that stuff. That is going to be something we can hold on to for a long time. Right. I think that like there was a period of time where we didn't have the home health aide coming in. And so I was going over and doing the bath, the bathing. And it takes a while for her. And, and so I remember, also about that time having that transition where I was talking about where like I was going to not just fly in there and like spray her down and like leave, that I was going to embrace this. And so, we started referring to it as the spa treatment, and there was lotion and things like that, and it didn't make it any, I still had to do all the same stuff I was doing when I was just running in and being like, okay, let's do this, but it was a much sweeter time. And I don't know if it was, I don't want to say it was enjoyable for her. Right. She's like having to have someone else give you a bath. But, I think it was a time where we were able to just have those sweet moments that, that'll be something that we'll always have now. So, although I was very thankful when we got to have health aid.
Definitely. I know that feeling.
But, yeah.
So after all this time and being in this sandwich generation, it really does take the unity of the family to be able to balance all of this. You mentioned she had some of her friends that could come over, and you have your little helpers as far as your teenagers go. They're not so little, but you know what I mean. And then even with your spouse, it's just this whole big circle of everyone understanding and contributing and knowing this is for the good of this person. And it's that whole like positive karma. You get what you give, but you can give too much of yourself in the same process. And that being sandwiched in the middle is not easy. It's not easy.
Well, and I do, I tell people all the time because, a lot of people know my mom and she's online and a voice for chronically ill people. And so, a lot of people follow me because of that, because they follow her. And I'll get messages from my friends and her friends and people that, know her. And they'll just, say very, very complimentary things to me. And I always say to them, this is, I'm not a perfect caregiver. And there are, times that I would not want, anybody to see the tears or the smart remarks or whatever. But I also want people to know that I don't do, and I would think every caregiver says this, that like, that is able to, that like we don't do this without support of
others,
someone else,
right?
If it's our family or a friend, and even if they're not able to support our family, our loved one, like, my mom is fortunate enough to have friends, blessed enough to have friends that can do her grocery shopping and can help her with her little yard outside of her condo, things like that. Will come fix her faucet or things like that. We have a pretty big family that, stays connected with her on Skype and things like that. But then my family and my husband's family, they've done a great job of supporting me and encouraging me. Like, if we're having a family function over here, but you need to go be with your mom, it's fine. Like, just do that. So I feel really blessed to have that support. And there have been times, when my mom's been sick in ICU, and I've just been up at the hospital for days. Like, I didn't have to worry about my kids and my husband. Like, everybody just, friends, family, everybody kind of is supportive. And so I know not every caregiver has that. And so, I always like to say, I don't know what all my spiritual gifts are in the world, but I do know that I'm born to be an encourager and a cheerleader. And so I try to encourage and cheer people on in whatever they're trying to do, but especially caregivers. And so I always love it when people reach out to me because I've been there. I am there. And I may not be able to show up at your house and help you, but I can cheer you on virtually or digitally, I guess.
Absolutely. That's why I had to reach out to you. I came across, it's like this, I have to connect with her. And that's why I love that you have the social media community that you're building out there, because we need each other. This caregiving there's those moments that no matter how many people you have around you, you can still have those moments of loneliness. And so it's right. Important to support each other and become a support network within that sandwich. The sandwich within the sandwich.
Yeah, for sure. And it's nice to have someone you can DM every now and then with like an eye roll emoji, and you don't have to say anything else.
Yeah,
and they
you know
understand.
Exactly where that's coming from. In the most loving way, but I get it.
Yes, exactly. Well, I am so glad you reached out to me too. I have just been digging around Instagram lately, trying to find more caregiver connections, especially ones that are like me, that are parenting and caregiving and maybe working too, and all of these things and be a person, just on your own. And I really was so grateful to stumble across you. And so I appreciate you inviting me on to share a little bit of my story.
Definitely.
And I hope it helps somebody.
Oh, it's going to. It's going to. And so for the other people who are going to be listening, how do they find you, Jnette? Where do they go to find you online?
So the best place to find me regarding caregiving is on Instagram. I'm not one of those people that's like always quote on brand, because my life is what it is. And so sometimes you'll see me wearing the parenting hat, and sometimes it's the marketing hat because that's my job. And then sometimes it's the caregiver hat, but it's real and it's life. And that's the way life is. Like today, that I wore all the hats. But my handle, and you'll probably have to put it in the notes, but
definitely,
I used to volunteer with for an organization with another girl named Jnette, and we both spelled our names the same way. So because we did, and she was the first one, I had to change my spelling for the purposes of the platform. And so that's why my Instagram handle is @Jnette, Nette, Yates. And I don't spell out Jnette all the way.
Okay. I was wondering, I figured that had something, but that makes sense.
Well, it just kind of stuck. Like, I think I created my Twitter handle or something for that, like when I was doing that. And so I used it. And then basically that just became like, that's how I signed my name. Sometimes I have to remember, like, oh, they want my real name.
Well, thank you so much for coming on with me today. Instagram.
Instagram's the place to get me. I'm on the others too, but that's the best place. And thank you again so much for having me. And I look forward to meeting more caregivers, meeting more sandwich generation caregivers on Instagram.
Absolutely.
So, yay.
Well, take care. And for those who are wondering what the sandwich generation, there you go. It is not about PB&Js or ham and cheese. It's about the real life of a parent and a caregiver, and even the working parent that's sandwiched in between these tasks, these responsibilities of our lives. So I hope you get something out of it. I know I did. And one of the main things I want you to take away from all of this, if you're in that sandwich generation, is self-care. Until next time, take care, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today. We really hope you've enjoyed this episode. To learn more about proactive caregiving and to hear other episodes of this podcast, please visit www.jessicalazellcannon.com. This podcast is produced by Cannon Light Media, LLC, www.cannonlightmedia.com. Music provided by Chris Paradise.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.